So as we are going deeper into the Bardo, Todal, and the Wrathful Deities, it's all the more important to hold the Dzogchen view in order not to become confused. And so Lance and I were talking, and we thought we would like to slightly add to the opening, before the opening prayers, to help give a little bit of a sense of that Dzogchen view. And it's actually something quite easy to do, because we've been using the relax, release, bring the mind home framework to gather our body, speech, and mind and create the right environment for our meditation. And we're going to do that again today, but then we're going to just pivot and reverse the order in what is a Dzogchen instruction of bring the mind home, release, and relax, as a way to open up once you've reached the spaciousness of shamatha and vipassana, and be able to go more deeply and really rest in the nature of mind. So we're just going to give a little sense of that before the opening prayers. It won't take much longer at all, but it may well be something you want to do in a more relaxed way and taking more time with it on your own. So let's start with the familiar part. Relax, release, and bring the mind home. And relax your body, assuming your meditation posture. Noticing any places of stress and releasing them. Breathing naturally. And now release. Release any of the day's distractions, any frantic feelings, any agenda you've been working on. And bring the mind home to this time and place of practice together, dropping any thoughts of the past and the future. And just letting your mind settle into a state of spaciousness and non-grasping. And now the pivot. Bring the mind home by turning it inward, resting in the nature of mind, with no attempt to manipulate or alter your thoughts. Let them come and go. There's nothing to do. This is the state of non-meditation. And release. Release your mind from its prison of grasping. Again, there's really nothing to do. This happens naturally as glimpse after glimpse of the nature of mind. Your trust and confidence grows. And the hidden but ever-present natural ease and generosity of your true nature is revealed. And you understand it to be your true, unbounded, blissful nature, manifesting as the wisdom, energy, and compassion of the three kayas. And relax. Merge completely into the state of Rigpa, into the luminous flow, without suppressing or following your thoughts. No doubt or doubter remains. This is it, complete remembrance, without anything being remembered or anyone remembering. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly, I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All Mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until I attain enlightenment, from now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all Mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Thank you.
You're muted.
Okay.
Good.
All right, thank you. I was asking Tom, will you recite the purification practice on page 14, 15, and 16 for us, please? And also, I would like to do the English, so I'll put that up on the screen. And if you don't have that, I'll be able to recite that at the very end. Whenever you're ready, Tom.
Natural liberation. Natural liberation of habitual tendencies, purification. It is the unified intention of the body, speech, and mind of the 42 peaceful and 58 wrathful deities of the great Buddha field that displays the wisdom that cuts through all ignorance to manifest their wisdom for the benefit of all enlightenment of all sentient beings. Om Ahum Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Om Rulu Rulu Jo Hum. Om Ahum Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Hata Data Hum. Rulu Rulu Jo Hum. Om Ahum Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Ah Rulu Rulu Jo Hum. From the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty. Intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva, seated upon a bejeweled throne adorned with lotus, sun, and moon cushions. The right hand holds a Vajra at the heart, symbolizing the union of awareness, of absolute wisdom and emptiness. The left hand supports a bell resting on the hip, symbolizing the union of wisdom, appearance, and emptiness. And in the head is adorned with a garland of perfect Buddhas, representing the 5 enlightened families of those gone to bliss. Thus, Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body, a perfect resource, exquisitely adorned with silks and jewels, seated in the posture of royal ease, with the right leg extended, the left drawn in. Radiating at the heart is a seed syllable hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manu Palaya. Vajrasattva Tenopa Tishta Drido Mebawa. Suto Kayo Mebawa. Supo Kayo Mebawa. Ano Rakto Mebawa. Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa. Sarva Karma Sutsa Me. Sitang Shriya Kuruhum. Ha 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 ho Bhagawan. Sarva Tathagata. Vajra Mame Munsa. Vajri Bahawa Maha Samaya Satwaha. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya. Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Drido Mebawa. Suto Kayo Mebawa. Supo Kayo Mebawa. Anorakto Mebawa. Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsa. Sarva Karma Sutto Me. Sitang Shriya Kuruhum. Ha 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 ho Bhagawan. Sarva Tathagata. Vajra Mame Munsa. Vajri Bahawa Maha Samaya Satwaha. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainment to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the four joys, O blessed one, who embodies essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus, I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions, comments about anything that we've talked about last week or the past weeks? Anything else regarding Bardo Todal? Yes, Jerry.
Yeah, I keep wondering, do these Buddhas have emotions such that if they see, they'd like to see us accomplish our task and to move forward. But if they see somebody is not just able to do that, do they feel discouragement? I know they don't judge, but do they feel, do they feel discouragement? That's what, or those feelings for somebody, like a child not accomplishing what you want them to do in life or death.
Well, it's a good question. And the answer is the Buddhas have no emotions.
Yeah.
The Buddhas have overcome the emotions. They see the suffering of beings. They recognize that, but yet they are not moved by it themselves to do anything other than everything that they have with their body, speech, and mind is for the benefit of others. And that the Buddhas are perfected human beings, that we as human beings are on the path to become Buddhas. So it's being able to recognize these things, but yet to just be able to abide in the true nature, into the Buddha Dharma, and be able to and just radiate light like the sun radiates light and heat for us in our solar system. So it's very similar to that.
Thank you.
Hey, Lance, I had a question on page 144 on the second paragraph. O Buddha, O child of Buddha nature, Reiki Tom, do you not recognize the present appearance as natural manifestation of actual reality, even though you may have learned in all the sutras and tantras, which form the Buddha's transmitted precepts, and even though you have practiced these doctrines for eon, Buddhahood will not be attained. Yes, if you recognize now the visionary appearance that are manifested naturally, then through the understanding of a single essential point and through the understanding of a single word, you will attain Buddhahood. This single essential point, what is that exactly pointing to? What is that single essential point?
It could be almost anything. Something that becomes like a trigger for you to be able to just blast through all your concerns, all the thoughts, all the attachments, all the aversions that put you right into the state of Buddhahood, of your true nature. So everyone may have a different, trigger, but it's something that just puts you right there. Sometimes you can see an image of the Buddha, you can see a statue, or you can see a picture, or you can just hear the Buddha's name, Buddha Shakyamuni, or anything like that. You can smell some incense, and it can just take you right there. You can hear a melody being recited or chanting being recited, and it just takes you right there, it catapults you right there. So whether it is something that is stable and lasts for the rest of your life, or maybe it lasts for 5 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, but for that time and space, you will be in that true nature. And that's what we have the ability to do. So that's the answer to the question. It can be anything that just takes you right to that trigger of being in your true nature.
So essentially, it's whatever we've brought from our past and not have really tapped into. So if we've already had these teachings and have studied the sutras and the tantras for eons, I mean, eons are unimaginable amount of time. So whatever, I guess each individual or each Buddha has a different, I guess, trigger, like you said, whatever it may be, a smell, a sight, a hearing something. So any of these, if we recognize that at that point, at that seminal point, we will recognize our true, realize our true intention, our primordial nature.
Our true nature.
Uh-huh.
Yes. It really is that simple.
Maybe
You
you
know,
can
but-
be just being slapped over the head with Tilopa's shoe, I guess. Right?
Maybe.
Oh, I need that once in a while, that shoe thrown at me. Uh-huh.
Well, maybe. But it's a moment of bliss. It's a moment of transcendence. It's a moment of realization of emptiness. You know, in Mahamudra, they say that there's 3 qualities that we can speak of the Mahamudra. The Mahamudra is like the Dzogchen. It's the great perfection. It is the liberation, the mind. And one of it is clarity. Being able to recognize all things perfectly clear. Being able to understand all things, knowing all things, but in a transcendent way. And then recognizing emptiness, understanding that all this phenomenal nature is just empty of its own accord, of its own doing. It is all just a display of that clarity and unimpededness. That mind is everywhere spontaneously. There are no boundaries.
So Lance, so this is a reassurance to someone abiding in the Bardo, that if at this point they don't recognize everything as actual reality, and they know, or they might not know, that they've spent an eon studying and they don't get it, but it's sort of a reassurance, like, don't worry, one little scent or word or image could open it all up to you.
Correct.
So
When
it's
you're
like,
ready,
don't
when
lose
you're
hope.
ready,
Yeah.
it's there. And remember, this isn't just for somebody who's dead. This is for you who is on the cushion meditating, because you can achieve this on the cushion. And that's the goal, to be able to do that. You know, you could say that I don't want to, the perfection comes in being able to, when you liberate your body, that your spirituality is liberated. It's no longer bound up in your body. You become that which is what we might call the Buddha. So we need to practice this now. We can have this experience now. That's what we're trying to do. Remember, the Bardo means the intermediate state. And if you remember, there are 6 intermediate states.
And this is one of them.
Correct. Do you remember what are the 6 intermediate states?
Well, there's dreams.
Okay.
There's well, they're all in here.
All right, wait a minute. Does anybody have that on the tip of their tongue?
There's the Bardo of dreams, the Bardo of reality, the Bardo of meditation, Bardo of living beings, the Bardo of intermediate, like death, and the Bardo of what is it called when you're getting reborn?
Becoming.
Becoming. Thank you, David.
Right. So liberation is possible in any one of those bardos.
It's a wonderful analogy, a story of the way we are now is like we're living inside a vase. And this vase, although we don't know it, is up on top of the very top of a mountain. And then one day, the vase shatters and we suddenly realize that the space inside and the vast space outside are all one. And that's the moment of enlightenment. We really didn't attain anything. We lost the obscuration and the confusion of who we really were. I love that. I try to hold on to that and hope that'll be there for me when I need it.
Very good. Yeah, no, that's perfect. So when we go into any one of these bardos, if we pass from one bardo into another, but in particular, when we go into the bardo of reality, when we meet the peaceful deities and the lights of the peaceful deities and so on, why aren't we enlightened then? Why aren't we liberated then?
Because we don't recognize that as being ourselves.
Okay.
So we're still like trapped in our own duality.
So what happens at that point?
I guess we're being pulled back by
Pulled back to what?
Towards the reality that we are building ourselves in our own mind, which is the Bardo of,
Well, to a false reality then.
right.
Okay. So can we say that we're being pulled down into, what might become rebirth?
Mm-hmm. To learn again.
So what is it when we meet? What is it when we meet the Harukas? We just, these past couple of 3 weeks, we've been talking about the Haruka Buddhas. What is it when we meet the Harukas? What is happening there?
It almost seems like a tough love because we missed out on the initial peaceful deities, and the wrathful deities are almost, I guess, trying almost like scare us straight to say, hey, these are.
Well, that's not exactly right. And that's where these images have, created this obscuration of meaning, because it's showing their ferocity, but it's not showing their compassion. You have to read into that, and that's what they really represent, is that very, very compassionate love and understanding and forgiveness and so on. That's what they really represent. So when we think of them as being, these fearful, hateful beings, that's a bit of a trap, and we have to look through that. We have to see through that. But so where do the Haruka Buddhas come from?
But they're manifestations of the peaceful deities. They're
right. So why did they manifest that way then? As
because of that level, we need that type of compassion.
Right.
We need that level of help.
So what Tom was saying, was, this kind of shocking power. It's just this, almost overwhelming power to be able to, of love and compassion, to be able to show that to us, to demonstrate that to us, to keep us from falling down further and be able to recognize the light that's still all around us. You know, the light is here now. We don't have to die to see the light. When we talk about the lights of the 5 Buddha families, we don't have to die to see that. We can see that in this lifetime. And it's not a light that we see with our eyes. You know, it's opening up our heart mind and recognizing what that light symbolizes and represents. You know, but to know it as a gnosis, not to know it as a vicarious experience, to know it as a gnosis, to know it as you are the embodiment of that light. You are the embodiment of that wisdom and compassion and so on, to know it that way. And it only comes through the experience. So the Buddhas are always trying to manifest their bodhicitta through their body, speech, and mind. Although it's the body, speech, and mind can be literal if they are in a human form like we are today, like we are right now, but it also can be in our heart mind, it can be in our brain mind. So we need to learn to recognize those things, and those things are just there. They've been there. They've always been there. They will always be there. And what we are doing is just recognizing it. So that, you know, really goes to the question that Jerry was answering, asking, is that, you know, the Buddhas are already here. Completely filling all this space is filled with Buddhas and surrounded by bodhisattvas, you know, and we're just waking up to realizing that and seeing ourselves as that, not even just part of it, as that. We are that. We look at our body. Our body is all these, you know, atomic structures and so on that are just Buddhas. They're all Buddha fields. So, does it stop there? If we don't recognize the Harukas now, if we don't respond to their loving kindness and compassion, and we're now sinking even further down into our being reborn again as some being, because we can't stand this much freedom, because what these Buddhas represent is freedom, is liberation. And we want to have an identity. We want to have this body. We want to have this ego. We want to have these possessions because it gives us a meaning. It gives us a purpose that we can hold on to, that we can cling on to, and that we can be deluded by, and so on. So what happens if we miss the opportunity to be rescued by the Harukas? What happens then? Well, that's the topic of tonight's story. So imagine, you know, we use this visualization all the time, samsara. And the definition of samsara that we most all are familiar with is the ocean of suffering. This great ocean of suffering, this body of suffering, you know. And when we use the word ocean, we think of, you know, this body of water, this vast body of water that has all this stuff in it and so on. So if we're in this bardo of reality, and we've missed the opportunity to be liberated by the peaceful deities, and we've missed the opportunity to be liberated by the Haruka deities, now we are moving ever closer to being lost, if you will, in this ocean of suffering, in this samsara. However, there is still opportunity to be rescued. Zegazun, would you turn off your microphone? John, would you turn off your microphone, please? Thank you. So So you have to imagine that here we are, these mental beings that are now in this ocean of suffering, this vast ocean of suffering. And there are these deities, there are these wrathful deities that are part of the family of the Haruka deities that are there to rescue those beings that are falling into this ocean of suffering. So imagine that it's like this great big round pond, if you will, for sake of discussion. And around the periphery of that pond, these beings are there, and they're reaching out their hands to be able to rescue those beings that are caught in this ocean, to be able to extract them from this ocean. Now, the beings need to be able to recognize those deities, and they need to be able to reach up and grab the hand, so to speak, to be pulled out. These beings aren't going down and forcibly trying to pull these guys out. You have to have the aspiration to want to do that. So these beings, these deities, these wrathful deities are called Matara. M-A-T-A-R-A-H, Matara. I'm going to put up a picture, but before I do, I just want to say that these pictures are symbolic of something, that we're talking about here, and they're symbolic of this transformation that is happening. The way that they're being rescued is through their transformation of concepts, because it's those concepts that are pulling us down. When we're free of concepts. We're free of the brain. The brain is full of all these concepts. The Buddha has no concepts. So we're trying to conceptualize what's going on all the time. So these Matara are trying to rescue us. And the thing that we have to get over is our own selves, our own bodies, And, we've talked, when we were talking about the Harukas, and we were talking about the articles, the implements that they're holding, and the ferociousness of their images and so on. And it's like they're feasting on the human body. And these Matara are even more gross than the Haruka Buddhas. They have body parts in their hands and around their body, around their necks and everything, and they're eating these, they're feasting on these bodies. And what this is symbolizing is that we are supplying them their food, their spiritual food that is transcendent of our physical bodies, of our physicalness. And along with that, our intellectualism, because our intellectualism is tied to our physical body. You can't have one without the other. So the spirituality is something that is there, but it doesn't go away. It's not bound by the same laws of physics that the physical body and the intellect are bound by. So these images are showing that the transcendence of the spirit, these spiritual beings who have transcended the human body. When we die, lots of crazy things start happening, doesn't it? I mean, if you've been in the presence of someone who has passed away and the grossness of that and so on, and how terrible that might seem, and the imagination starts running, and whether they're going to be put into a casket and they're going to be buried, or they're going to be burned in a cremation or something like that. In the old country, in the East, they did sky burials. And if you don't know what a sky burial is, I'll tell you that what it is they feed you to the birds and the animals, the dead body. They take you up to what's called a charnel ground, which is like a cemetery kind of a ground. And in Tibet, they don't have very much wood because it's very, very high. So they don't have anything to cremate you with. So you might remain frozen for some period of time because the heat there is very negligible as well. But when it comes time, they take you up to the charnel ground and they literally begin to cut into pieces the body, and the vultures come and the hyenas come and the bugs come and so on like that, and they consume the body. And that's very gross to us of our great noble Western ways, but there is a certain symmetry, I think, to this Eastern philosophy that sees that the body is returning, and not just to feed the worms and the maggots that are in the ground that spontaneously come up from our bodies when we die and so on, but not just to feed them, but to feed these living creatures like these vultures and birds and hyenas and other animals and so on like that. So all this is if you're hearing it for the first time, I know it can be very shocking. But this is what we need to transcend. This is part of what we need to be, because otherwise we're holding on to the body. And we say, oh, I don't want that. I want to go into this, $12,000 coffin. And I want to be driven in a Cadillac, to where they're going to put me in the ground and all this kind of stuff.
Lance,
So, yes, sir.
quick question. It seems as though that's like a final offering that we are making with our bodies.
Well, that's a healthy way to look at it, is that, yes, you're offering your body, to those other beings. Yes.
Lance, can you please say again, what are the Mataras feasting on? Is it our thoughts and emotions? Is that what you said? I didn't catch that.
Well, let me do this. I'm going to get to that, answer that question. But first, let me do this.
All right.
So here are the Harukas. Okay, so we've talked about these, and let me put this up here. So I presume everybody can see this now. So here is the main Haruka here, who is the emanation of Samantabhadra and Samantabhadri. And then down here is Varanchana, and over here is Ascobia's emanation, and over here is Ratnasambhava's Haruka emanation, and over here is Amitabha's emanation as a Haruka, and over here is Varanchana, is Amagog City's emanation. Now, around them, I know it's difficult to see in this small picture, around them are these other wrathful deities. So now I'm going to go to them. So here are the 8 wrathful Matara. And these have human bodies, and they have human heads, but they have body parts and so on all around them. And these are the natural transformation. Let me see if I can get rid of this here. They are the natural transformation of the mental constructs associated with the 8 classes of consciousness and the 8 actions. So we have to understand what are the mental constructs. So this is what they are rescuing, our mental constructs. This is what is pulling us down. Remember, I said that our mental body is trying to conceptualize stuff. As Buddhas, we don't need that conceptualization. But the further away we get from Buddha, the more we want to have these conceptualizations, because that's our identity. That's our ego. That's what we want. We want to have that. So we have to transform the natural transformation of these mental constructs associated with the 8 classes of consciousness and the 8 actions. So I'm going to turn this off now. Okay. So what are these? Now, I'm not going to go into a long discussion about this. We talk about this in Buddhism 101, actually more like Buddhism 102 or more, a little bit more advanced. So, but there's 8 levels of consciousness. Now, I know everybody's familiar with the main 5 levels of consciousness. And the 5 levels of consciousness are our vision, our hearing, our smell, our gustatory, our taste, and our tactile. So those are the 5 sensory consciousnesses that the brain is connected to. You know, the receivers of the sight is the eyeballs and the ears and the tongue and the nose and so on. And all of our skin is all part of the tactile. So that's what's sensing all this stuff that's around us and so on. Then the next thing is, how does all this get processed? Well, all this gets processed back in the central processing unit, the CPU, the brain. So this is where the mental constructs are. The mental consciousness is here, that is taking all this information that's coming in and it's processing it for us and giving us all these conceptualizations of what this is. Or if it looks like that and it smells like this and it feels like that, it must be, I'll give it a name. It must be like this. I'll give it this name. And then I can communicate that to all of you and you say, oh yeah, I know what that is. Yeah. That's the same. I experienced that too. I say, okay, we're all going to call it the same thing. So that's all part of the 6 consciousnesses, the 6 basic consciousnesses. Then the 7th one is the consciousness of what we call the afflictive emotions. This is the klesha consciousness. The klesha is a Sanskrit word. And this is all the afflictive emotions that come in now, all these things that we're thinking about, all these things that we're doing and so on, all these actions that we are engaging in, and all the consequences that build up as a result of that all reside in this consciousness of afflictive emotions. So maybe I'm not an expert in these things, but maybe this is, you know, the territory of the psychology, of the psyche or something like that. You know, where all these things are happening and we begin to do things and not do things, not based on our observations of our 5 senses, but now on the afflictions of our emotions. I don't do those things, or I will do those, I will do those things. So this is called the klesha consciousness, the afflictive emotion consciousness. That's number 7. So the number 8 is the consciousness called the Alaia consciousness. And that's spelled A-L-A-Y-A, Alaia consciousness. And this is generally defined as the storehouse consciousness. That all those things that we are engaged in the klesha consciousness, in concert with the things that are happening with the 5 basic consciousnesses of our sensory things and so on. Now, the results of our engagements are stored in this Alaia consciousness. So it's like this is the repository of our karma. So whether it's good karma or it's bad karma, this is where it's held. And then we begin to rely on our good karma to save us from our bad karma. You know, so we start going through playing that. But what if we have no karma? What if we have nothing to store in the consciousness, in the Alaia consciousness? That it's all been neutralized. This is the Buddha. There's no attachments, there's no aversions, there's no jealousies, no ignorance, no delusions, no envy, no greed, no pridefulness. All that has been neutralized. So all this just becomes to become just part of what it is to be a human being, but a human being who has now risen to the level of a bodhisattva and about to be a Buddha. So the things that are the objects of these organs that we have, these sensory things, the objects then come into play. So we're going to get there in a minute. So these Matara beings, these heavy-duty looking wrathful deities, are there around the periphery of this ocean of samsara to pull us out, to help us to get out of this now falling in deeper into this ocean of suffering, into this samsara. And we are the Matara, just like we are the Haruka, and just like we are the peaceful deities. It's all part of who we are. And we have to save ourselves, don't we? So we begin to recognize those qualities of these different beings and what their activities are in order to save ourselves from the kleshas, from the karma. Okay, so everybody with me on this? Any questions or comments?
I do have a question.
Okay.
So just going back to the Alaia consciousness, is that the same thing or is it different with the three times, the past, present, and future?
That's just past, present, future is just a it's just a concept of time, which is, you know, it's a fabrication.
I was just wondering if it's the same thing, you know, when they're referring to.
It could be, you know, you can show, you know, there's linkages between them, but I don't think there's a, you know, if they're part of the dependency of things that, you know, I think you ought to talk to a Kempo about that. He'll talk to you about that for a couple of hours.
Okay. Yeah, I do have another question, but probably you're going to talk about it later, so I'm just going to wait. Thanks.
Okay. So is this making some sense? Can you see what's happening here? What's in place? You know, the Buddha's manifesting in these different forms in order to rescue us, in order to show us our true nature, to give us a respite, a peacefulness, however temporary it may be, in our suffering, so that we may recognize ourselves as Buddha, as what we call Buddha. Maybe you want to call it Christ. Maybe you want to call it God. Whatever you want to call it, it's fine, you know, but it's the essence of this pure nature that we are the embodiment of. We have the potential to recognize that. And that's what we're trying to do.
Lance, what strikes me in what you're saying, because I was looking at the chart in the back of the book, the correspondences just keep rolling on. because the 8 classes of consciousness, we remember being the male bodhisattvas, and now it's the mental constructs associated with the 8 consciousnesses that are the matara. And it looks like it rolls on just, to the
Well, that's right.
female bodhisattvas corresponding to the pisachi.
Yeah,
but
so
again,
let's
with
not
the
get too
mental
deep into it
constructs.
yet. We're still trying to paint a big picture here.
Right, and not the detail about those, but the idea that the new level now is the mental constructs, that it's like this soap opera we've added that we have to dig our way out of, is kind of a way I'm wondering if that's useful to think of. And
As a matter of speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're
And the
sinking
wrathful-
more into that. We're sinking more into the story.
yeah,
We're sinking more into this the games that we play.
yeah, okay,
We're sinking more into being a human being, a physical, or wanting that physicality, wanting that intellectual, that psyche, more than the spirituality. We're moving away from the spirituality, but the spirituality is trying to rescue us, saying, here I am. You don't have to go that far. So now let me continue with the next part. So now we're in this ocean of suffering, or these beings are in this ocean of suffering. They've fallen away. They didn't recognize the Matara who were there. And they get into this big ocean and they start sinking to the bottom with no chance, no apparent chance of rescue at all, because they are just so far away. They're so much deep into this ocean of suffering that the only beings there that can help are called the Pisachi, P-I-S-A-C-I, sorry, P-I-S-A-C-I, Pisachi. And the Pisachi are even more fearsome looking beings who are emanations of the Harukas, who are swimming, who are in the ocean of suffering themselves, and are there to bring up, to not allow those beings to sink to the bottom. They're there to get them out of the bottom, to get them up so that maybe they can rise up to the Matara, to be able to be saved by the Matara, to be rescued by the Matara. So these beings, these Pisachi, they have they're incredible, because their whole life is in the ocean of suffering. But they are there for the benefit of the enlightenment, of the liberation of those beings that they're trying to rescue. And maybe you know somebody like that. Maybe you've met people like that. Maybe you've heard about people like that. Maybe you've been that yourself. In this lifetime, we encounter many, many things, and we do many strange things, and sometimes we do some things at what seem to be at our own peril for the benefit of others. And we don't know that we're doing it. We don't recognize that we're putting ourselves in peril at that time. But we have this strong urge, for lack of a better word, to want to help these beings. And these Pisachi is very much like that, who are there swimming about to keep these beings buoyant so that they can have the awareness to be able to take hold of the Matara, who then can extract them from the ocean, then to be in front of the Haruka, who now can bestow their compassion on them and be able to allow them to recognize the light that has been there the whole time. So it's pointing out how the Buddha is always manifesting, is always there for the benefit of the enlightenment of beings. So now I want to show you this bit. So here are the Pasachi. So here are the 8 wrathful Pasachi, and these are human bodies with animal heads, different animal heads. And we're going to explore what they are. And some of them have bird heads and some of them have mammal heads and so on like that. And you can see that they have different degrees of human bodies. And again, you know, this is demonstrating that this is transcendent of our human nature. So this is the natural transformation of mental constructs associated with the objects of the 8 classes of consciousness and the 8 actions. So these 8 classes of consciousness, now the objects of these 8 consciousnesses now, let me come back. So these are the objects of our mental faculties or mental devices that are being confused, that we are attached to. So in other words, we have our vision, we see these sights, and now we get attached to these sights. So that's an object of the sensory of our vision. The sounds, we become attached to the sounds, or maybe we have aversions to the sounds, or we have aversions to the sights, you know, but nevertheless, we are conflicted with them. Our smells, we have our olfactory system that is breathing, that can smell things, and we get attached to the smells, or we have aversions to the smells, the objects of our olfactory senses. And then our tastes, you know, our gustatory wants to eat things that are delicious and so on. So we get attached to those things, or maybe we have aversions to those things. And then our touching, our tactile, there are things that we just love to touch. Nice garments and so on like that, and body parts. There's all kinds of things that we love to touch. And we can spend our whole entire life just fixated on those things, that these are the reasons why I want these things and so on. You know, so those things, those objects that are so pleasing to us, these pleasure objects and so on, that we want to touch and caress and everything, these are objects of the senses. And then the thoughts, the thinking, the processing, the euphoria that results from all these things, having a great meal, and how euphoric you can feel about having that great meal. We're hearing a great piece of music or seeing a great piece of artwork or something like that. How euphoric you can become is, you know, the brain processing that, isn't it? And the attachments that come, or the aversions from it. You know, some people love to go to horror movies, and the more gross they are, the more graphic they are, some people just love that. Give me the gore. Some people just love that. Other people are completely turned off by it. So these objects. So those are the first 6 of the consciousness levels. Then the 7th consciousness level is we talked about was the klesha consciousness. Another way of saying it is the I, me, mine. You know, where all the karma is that's generated by I, me, mine. I, me, mine. You know, in many languages, and I'm not an expert in this, but in many languages, but in particular the Tibetan, and Sanskrit, there is no word I or me or mine. And I know in some of the other Asian languages that's true. And maybe in other languages too, I don't know. I think I'm not going to go out on a limb and start guessing, but nevertheless, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So in the klesha consciousness, which is the karma, the I, me, mine, I want these things, I need these things, I will do these things and everything, is all the karma, the causes and the results, you know, and maybe it's the results that we fixate on, that we want the results, and we're willing to go through the causes to have the actions to get those results. So they become the objects of the kleshas, of the consciousness, of that klesha consciousness, is to have more of those things. And then the eighth consciousness of the Alaia consciousness, the storehouse consciousness, is to be fixated on the stains and the exaltations. There might be better words for that, but that's what I think about, the stains and the exaltations that we fixate upon. You know, how saintly I am, or how devious and devilish I can be. And the ego will attach to any of those things. So the Alaia consciousness is very much, I think, in parallel with the idea of the soul, S-O-U-L. And in the extreme of eternalism, the soul will always survive. The soul will always be there. The soul will be vindicated. The soul will be rescued. The soul. And then if it's stained, it can be purified either through an act of divine intervention, of forgiveness by the great creator or something like that, or that you can gain merit and so on, and that it can wash clean those stains and so on. And those exaltations, they themselves, these notions of superiority, of supremacy, and so on, can become corrupted, and they become stains themselves that are almost indelible, it seems. So it's the it's the Pasachi who are in this ocean of suffering, where these objects, this is what the ocean is made up of, these objects of suffering that we are fixating on, either in our attachments or our aversions. So it's the Pasachi who are transforming our fixations on these objects in order for us to liberate ourselves from those fixations. Thereby we can be rescued by the Matara, thereby we can go to the Harukas and be saved by them, and then we can go to the Buddhas. So when I'm saying saved, or rescued, I'm using that as a figure of speech. It's all a matter of liberating oneself. It's recognizing oneself as the true nature of our goodness, of the virtue. So anybody got any comments or questions about this?
No.
Yes, William.
Yeah, I'm wondering. It sounds like all of this is an I, me thing. And you said in these languages that there's no I's or my's or me's in there. How do they go around? How do they get around the I, my, me in their languages?
They talk in the first person. They use their proper names. So instead of saying, I want this, it would be Lance wants this.
Okay.
Oh, that's
So-
Lance's.
Good night, all. Have to go.
Okay, Thomas. So they use the first person, the proper names. They don't have pronouns.
So what do they do when they have a bunch of the first person people?
Well, I don't know. You get a little deeper than I can go because I'm not a scholar in linguistics or language or anything like that. But I just, I've been shown that, and from the translation work that I've done, I've recognized that. So it would be better to ask someone who is familiar with those languages. Yes, Adrian.
Lance, why do the Mataras and the Pisachis have different forms, different body forms? Why are they humans? Why have they, have a mix of, head of animal and humans? Is that some type of hierarchy, or what's the message behind that?
I can't say for sure. I could only guess at it, and I think to me, it's part of the genius of the art form. To be able to characterize in a illustrative way, these beings. By seeing these beings, they invoke a certain awareness, a certain, they call it a mnemonic. You see something or you hear something, and right away you associate it with something else, So I think it's that, I think it's, those that are the humans, they're humans that are, trying to rescue us. The Matara seem to have these human bodies and so on, but the Piscachi have a human body, but they have these animal heads. They're maybe thinking like animals. Remember, they're in the ocean themselves. They're caught in the oceans themselves, but at the same time, they have this penchant for wanting to save, other beings and so on. So beyond that, I can't give a good explanation. And then reading the book doesn't, in Gourmet Dorje, I don't think he goes into any kind of a deep explanation about that. Nor in any other books that I've read. Only goes to show I need to read more books to answer a question like that. But frankly, I'm easy to please.
Yeah. No, I understand. I completely understand. I was wondering if there is something, more, obvious, but what you said makes sense.
I'm sure there's been books written about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you might like to read Robert Thurman. You ever try and read Robert Thurman? You got to read him with a pickaxe and a shovel because he's so dense.
Oh.
And for some people love it. For me, it's very difficult. Maybe one day. I always say, well, maybe I don't need that. So,
thank you.
You're welcome. All right, these are perfectly good questions. Good questions. So, to get through this now remember that we're doing this study to recognize ourselves as Bardo beings. We are in the Bardo of living, who experiences the Bardo of dreams and experiences the Bardo of meditative concentration. So in any one of those Bardos, we can attain liberation. How stable it will be is another question, but it's through the repetitiveness of it and the devotion to it that makes the stability, but then when we go through the Bardo of death and go into the Bardo of reality, now what we are doing is we are generating that light, that energy that when we study, we are cultivating, and now we are transmitting that to the Bardo beings who are in the Bardo of reality and who are the migrators in there who don't understand what's going on, who may not remember what is going on. And what we're trying to do is to try and come together and help them. So there's an analogy that I use many times, and that is, if we all together, if there's 15 people here tonight or however many, and we all have a 100-watt flashlight in our hands, and we all take the flashlight and we shine it at the same spot, that each time one of us turns our flashlight onto that spot gets more intense. It gets richer, it gets brighter, it gets darker in its luminance, and so on. It gets heavier and so on. So when we are doing these things, when we are reciting these prayers and so on, remember, there are hundreds of thousands of other people that are doing these things for their loved ones, for their friends and so on, all around the world. So we're not, we say we're thinking about our loved ones and so on, but all that they are capable of seeing is this light, or recognizing this light that's coming in all these directions. And we are bringing that all together. We are synchronizing that light all together. So we're understanding what it is that is making us fall away and why we need that light, and how that light begins to really help us. So these practices, so now if we go back to the book now, if we go to page 131. So page 131. So now it says here in the middle of the page, everybody with me? So now we go in the middle of the page, it says, this is read from the 13th to the 20th day. So for 7 days, we're just reading, or we're concentrating on this. We may be reading the whole book, but if we're only focusing on this particular section here, this would be for those 7 days. It says, or it says repeat for 8 days. Excuse me, I'm not counting it right. And there it says the natural transformation of the mental constructs associated with the 8 classes of consciousness, the actions outside of the pit of cyclic existence. The actions of outside the pit of cyclic existence. So the cyclic existence is the samsara. These guys are on the periphery of that, who are trying to help beings and so on. So now I'm going to read this. And these names are tongue twisters. The names are not important really at all. But to convey the imagery and the transcendence of what these beings represent is what's important. So I'll read this. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Pema Dorje, listen without distractions. The 8 Kari, or the Sari is actually pronounced Sari, Matara, will now be emerging from your own brain and appearing before you. Do not be afraid. From the eastern direction of your brain, the white Sari holding a human corpse as a cudgel in her right hand and a blood-filled skull in her left hand will arise before you. Do not be afraid. From the southern direction, the yellow Kari shooting an arrow from a bow. From the west, the red Pramoa holding a crocodile victory banner. And from the north, the black Vitali holding a Vajra and blood-filled skull will arise. From the southeast, the red-yellow Pukasi holding entrails in her right hand and eating them with her left. From the southwest, the green-black Gazmari holding a blood-filled skull in her left hand, stirring this with a Vajra in her right hand and drinking awesomely. From the northwest, the white-yellow Kandali, tearing apart the head and body of a bloated corpse, holding the heart in her right hand and eating the body with her left. And from the northeast, the blue-black Smasani, tearing a head and a body apart and eating, will arise. These great Kari Matara, who are indicative of the 8 classes of consciousness, will emerge from your own brain and surround the 5 blood-drinking deities and their consorts. Do not be afraid. So we need to understand at some level the 8 levels of consciousness that I gave to you before. And that's so these 8 Kari are working on the transformation of those consciousness, those concepts, those 8 classes of consciousness. So now, the 21st day to the 28th day, we repeat for 8 days. And this is the natural transformation of the mental constructs associated with the objects of the 8 classes of consciousness. And these are the actions within the pit of cyclic existence. So this is those beings inside the ocean of suffering. O child of Buddha nature, Riki Bu, Kunchok Pema Dorje, listen without distraction. The 8 Pisachi, who are indicative of the sense objects, will emerge and appear before you, encircling this array. From the east, the dark brown Simhamukhi, lion-headed, her 2 arms crossed on her breast, carrying a corpse in her mouth and shaking her mane. From the south, tiger-headed, the red Vigyamuti, her 2 arms crossed and snarling, staring with bulging eyes. From the west, fox-headed, the black Srigalamukhi, holding a razor in her hand and entrails in her left, eating the entrails and licking the blood. From the north, wolf-headed, the black-blue Svanamukhi, tearing apart a corpse with her 2 arms and staring with bulging eyes. From the southeast, vulture-headed, the white-yellow Grigamulti, carrying a large human corpse over her shoulder and holding a skeleton in both hands. From the southwest, kite-headed, the black-red Kankamuki, carrying a large corpse over her shoulders. From the northwest, a crow-headed, the black Kakamuki, holding a skull in her left hand, a sword in her right, and eating a human heart and lungs. From the northeast, owl-headed, the blue-black Alukamuki, holding a vajra in her right hand, wielding a sword in her left and eating flesh. These, the 8 Pisachi, indicative of the sense objects, will emerge from within your brain and arise before you, encircling the 5 blood-drinking deities and their consorts. Do not be afraid. Recognize all that arises as the natural expressive power of awareness manifesting naturally. So that's as far as we're going to get right now. So you can see on each one of these pages are illustrations, images of these deities, of these wrathful deities that are doing these, that are engaging in these terrible positions and so on. So how does this land on you? What do you think of this? Jerry, what do you think of this? Jane, what do you think of this?
Well, before you read this, I was wondering if these Pishashi that represented different animals, if the attributes of that animal would be what they were trying to help us overcome. But after listening to this, that's not the case. That's just the symbolism how they look.
Well, you might have a point there. And, it might be interesting if you had time and you wanted to take the time to do that, to analyze it, looking at those, the symbolism of that. Maybe there's something there.
No, I was just wondering about that because we've been studying a form. It's an ancient Chinese practice, animal frolics with different animals, and there's different attributes attributed to those animals. And then that's why I was thinking of that with this. So I'll give it some thought.
Okay.
And what is the sixth consciousness? I missed that one.
The sixth consciousness is the brain that processes all this. That processes the five senses.
As a matter of fact, what we're studying is also a Tibetan method of Qigong. And it's very interesting because it's explained that the question came out, why do we have all these different animals, deers, lions, tigers, horses, and everything? And they said thousands of years trying to explain these different movements and how they impact your breathing and your body and your mind. You need something to explain it. So they started to use animals, and they, they looked at the animals and they said, this animal does this type of thing, and we can explain the movements that impact your body by talking about an animal. In a sense, I see this is what we're doing here, is using, otherwise what do you use, numbers or symbols? This is the easiest way you can explain it. And it took me a while to say, hey, that's not the way he really does look. You know what I mean? When you get over there, no, it's going to be a lot of what you perceive.
It's not so literal. It's kind of figurative.
Yeah.
I remember most of these people, when these things were first composed, people were illiterate. So being able to, have these wordy descriptions of these beings and everything would have been lost on them.
What I think about when we go through what we just did right now with all the blood and the guts in your mouth and your eyes and the skulls and everything, it's kind of like saying to the soul, here's your last chance, buddy. You know what I mean? I'm giving you a chance. Stick your arm out there and come back and give it another try, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, that's.
I hope we all don't end up in that same situation. We've been good souls on this planet, and we lived a good life, and by the time you're ready to die, you've kind of done a realization and a self assessment of your whole life, so that you're actually kind of prepared. You kind of like did a study to say, I know how I'm going to answer that one when I get there. Being such a bastard to my friend, I know how I'm going to handle that one. But it's more than just answering the question. You got to show that your heart and your love is really there, and the Buddhists can see it. And once again, not judging, but they can determine that you probably have resolved your issues after 1,000 lifetimes, and they're going to give you a chance to come on over.
Well, remember, you are the Buddha.
That's right.
We're not trying to please the Buddhas. The Buddhas are us. We're trying to please ourselves from the point of view of being a Buddha.
Yeah, you can't keep stealing up to the last minute and say, hey, I'm gonna win this one. No, you're gonna make the change now. I believe.
Right.
You got to make the change while you're living, and that's kind of the message of this, of what we're learning here. And
okay. Does anybody else have a comment?
I do have a comment question, Lance, if I may.
Sure.
How are these deities, like the Mataras and the Sashi, in the message that they're trying to convey to us? How are they different from, like, for example, the four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma? In the sense that you know, if we're practicing looking at this deities and what they're trying to teach us, is that different from that, or?
I don't think it's a matter of teaching, but it's a matter of being able to symbolize these 8 consciousness levels and being able to put it into perspective to see how it's obscuring our true nature and how we have to be liberated by these, from these objects, from these mental constructs. And these particular deities, the Matara and the Piscachi, are showing us how it's done. You know, it's not anything too very sophisticated. The Matara are just, you know, there to rescue us, to pull us out. You know, it's up to us to take their hands. The Piscachi are swimming around in the ocean of suffering along with us, and are there to keep us from falling to the bottom. You know, don't get attached to those objects. They're just going to pull you down, man. You know, don't get too hung up on those things. You know, they may be lots of fun right now, but that's the kind of stuff that when we're in the Bardo, that's the kind of stuff that pulls us right back into it. You know, have we really liberated from it? Do we want to liberate from these things? You know, we got to ask ourselves, do we want to liberate ourselves from these? And if we don't have the devotion to want to do that, we have to reconcile that too. Maybe you're not capable of doing it. Maybe we say, oh, I can't get these thoughts out of my mind. You know, I've got these kleshas. I have these afflictive emotions that I'm not going to be able to purify. I try and purify. I sit here for weeks on end or whatever it is, and I still can't purify these things. You know, well, okay, maybe I got to wait for another lifetime to be able to do that. So I graciously accept another lifetime in order to be able to purify further on the spiral of purification.
Okay.
So to answer your question, you know, directly, they where else is it characterized in the drama of being a human being that you have to get non-conceptual? You know, because that's what this is doing. It's saying, here's this conceptualities that are pulling you down, you know, now you got to get non-conceptual.
Lance, I have an observation of sorts. I'm just really struck with one huge difference between the peaceful and wrathful deity mandalas that I just hadn't noticed until tonight. And that is that with the wrathful deities, except for the Herukas, all of the deities from the Matara on are female. And I was going, wow, isn't that interesting? And then I thought, well, it makes sense with what you said with the ocean of suffering. I mean, this is the Dakini principle at work in the wrathful deity mandala, that using all the things that trap us in samsara to set us free is just the essence of the Dakini principle. And there it is, laid out in front of us with all of these female deities who are described as Dakinis and yoginis and all. And I thought, wow, that's really right there for us to realize that help is for the things that uniquely trap us in samsara, and allowing the deities to help us realize that they can also be the things that free us.
Yeah, that's really good that you point that out. And, you know, we would talk about that eventually, but yes, that's right, you know, because this is like the body of the Buddha, you know, it's the body of the Dharmakaya, you know, and that burst forward from the womb, so to speak, from the female, from that aspect. Yes. And it's the male who who becomes like the warrior who's fighting all among all that, and having to deal with that, becomes the actualizer of the wisdom that the mother is the embodiment of. So yes. Joanna, what do you think of this? You've been very happily smiling, and what do you think of this? Joanna's trying to unmute her microphone, I think. You can press and hold the space bar on your computer, on your keyboard.
There it is.
There you are. There you are.
Well, I was thinking of all these Matari and the Sachi eating flesh and beating things and all this. It's kind of like, get over your body, get over it, but come on, let it all go. You can just eat it, or we can throw it, or we can whatever, hey, come to the spiritual side in a way. That's something I saw anyway in that.
Well, that's very good. Yeah, I was talking with Katie earlier today, and we were saying that it's like we're offering our bodies as spiritual food.
Yeah.
To these deities,
Practice, yeah.
And eat it up.
Yeah.
Lance, can I
Yes.
throw something in? Yeah, so I need an answer to this. So, you spend your whole life doing good, bad things, and you get to assess it over time and go through this process. But, if you've been around for maybe hundreds of times or even thousands of times in reincarnation, you'll have a lot of, what do we call it? Karma out there that a lot of us don't even know. We know nothing about. So I would say that, is this process saying that we should probably spend time on Earth trying to learn our karma and learn prior lives? And you can do this through, mediumships and things that who can put you back there. Is the message that we should spend time while we're here also learning about all these things we did in prior lives, because we're going to be faced with it during this process? What's the message they're telling us?
It's I think it's like what you manifest. If you manifest those attachments to the klesha consciousness, yes, they're going to be there. If you attach or have aversions to the Alaia consciousness, yes, they're going to be there. But if you are able to relax and just live a life of peace, that whatever comes up, you'll be able to, through your virtue, be able to experience and be able to neutralize immediately. So there should be no anxiety about it, no expectation about it, and it goes to the 4 thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma. And there's this one passage in this prayer that we do, and here it says, this is about the suffering of samsara, exactly what we're talking about. It says, in the 3 lower realms and in the 3 higher ones, there's not an instant of absolute happiness. I will avoid the root cause of my samsaric existence and practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So what that is it doesn't matter how it is that we got here, as much as what we're going to do with it right now. And if we're paying too much attention to it, we're going to strengthen it. What we need to do is just pacify it, let it go, not have attachment to it, not have aversion to it. Practice the excellent path of peace to enlightenment. So I think that's the real message. That's the essence of the message.
Okay, very good. Thank you. A good answer.
You know, years ago, we used to say, you know, when you started talking about things, you know, you would experience something, and then you start talking about it, and you talk to this one about it, you talk to that one about it, you talk to somebody else about it. Every time you meet somebody, you're strengthening whatever that is. And if something happens, you do something or whatever, you experience something, and you want to communicate it, do it one time and then let it go. Maybe you've got somebody that you can trust. Maybe you confess it to yourself, and then you let it go. And then after a period of time, it's just gone. But the more that we keep repeating things over and over and over again, the stronger and stronger and stronger they get. Anybody else? Yeah, Michael.
I mean, I love this part. I'm one person that needs all my sense organs scrubbed clean. This, you know, reading through this really disrupts my relationship with my physicality, which is exactly what I need at any given moment. You know, that I'm in my body, is to just be real about my relationship with it and my attachment to it. I mean, we're in love with our physicality, and this just allows us to chuckle about you know, souls coming out of us and just chewing it up for us. It's just we're doing ourselves a great favor by letting these things emerge in our consciousness and show us how trivial our physicality is in the bigger picture. Yeah, I love it.
Good.
Lance, I have a question.
Sure, Bhavani.
Isn't it true that when we reach these Bardo states that we're free of the body, we have left the body? So I don't quite understand why all of these things with offering up the body as spiritual food and everything, how that relates if we're not identifying with the body anymore, I think, at this point, or is that
Well, how temporary is that freedom from the body? Have you freed yourself from the body for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour, or maybe a couple days? Or is it something that, have you reached enlightenment already and you're already free from the body?
Well, isn't that true that in the Bardo states we have freed ourselves from the body? If our body has died, we've left
We're in the Bardo now. Remember, we're in the Bardo now. We're in the Bardo of living now. So,
okay, so you're talking about the Bardo of living at this point.
So the point is that we're trying to stabilize that liberation. And what is it that brings us back? Why do we stay in that meditation? Why do we lose the meditation? Because we start thinking about the body. We start thinking about the intellect. We start thinking about our psychosis, or not our psychosis naturally, but our neuroses, you know, our personality, our psyche. We start thinking about that stuff. We start getting practical.
Okay, so you're speaking more now of while we're here in the ocean of samsara, not after the body has died and we have left this body.
Right, we got to do it now.
Okay.
I mean, we have a chance to do it in the Bardo of reality. You know, that's what we're we're preparing ourselves for, but how stable are we going to be there? How strong are we going to be there? You know, is that going to be stronger than our kleshas? Remember, what's the definition of the kleshas? The kleshas are our afflictive emotions. What's going to be stronger? What's stronger now? When you sit down to do a meditation, let's say you meditate for 30 minutes. What brings you out of the meditation? Why did you stop meditating? Or did you stop meditating?
Usually it's a dog or a cat jumping on my lap.
Okay. So your klesha of attachment to the dog or cat, something disturbed you.
Yeah.
You know, but can you remain in that meditative state despite the fact that the dog is barking and the cat is pawing at you or whatever? Can you maintain that state despite that?
It's a different form of meditation, yes.
The result's the same.
Okay.
We choose our environment. You know, why do you think the great meditators go off into a cave someplace? They have less distractions.
But then they have to come out of their cave and face reality to see if they learned their lessons.
True. And also to help other beings.
Yeah.
And to help other beings. And if they recognize that they have to go back into the cave, they do that.
Mhm.
So part of this is getting over our delusions. The delusion, I'm okay. Or to put it in the Tibetan way, Lance is okay. No pronouns. You know, it's getting over that.
I think it's the attachment to our bodies that we're trying to clean up more than the body itself.
Of course. And so some practices, we recognize that we can enjoy the body. We can enjoy these things. But can we enjoy it and not be attached or have aversion to these things? That's the trick. That's a wise person. That's a practical person. And to look at this life as the gift that it is, that we've given ourselves, to be able to enjoy these things, but not to be attached to them, not to have aversions to them. So, you know, the Eightfold Path is the guide to help us do that. The 3 mind trainings of the 6 paramitas are the guides to that. You know, we've got all these tools. So we're beginning to see how all this comes together. Remember, this is the table, the Bardo Todal is the table on which all these other practices lay. And we see how it's all interconnected in our spirituality.
Lance, quick question. Do the lamas that came here from Tibet, just out of curiosity, do they still do sky burial here, or they do, like, you know?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think they do them in Tibet either. You know, maybe in the countryside. I mean, they're not doing it in Lhasa. The Chinese aren't going to put up with that.
I gotcha.
You know, but maybe in some of the hinterland, you know, they can still do those things.
Michael, what? Did you sign up for a sky burial?
What was that?
Michael, I asked him if he signed up for a sky burial.
Oh,
Yeah, after my cryogenesis runs out, yeah, things will
well,
have changed. Things will have changed by then.
I donated my body to the medical examiner. I was an organ donor before. Maybe some of you guys are organ donors, and they're going to pick out what they can and put the rest in a box, and then, and then if you become a corpse that they use in the medical school or whatever they deem it useful for. And I might have told you this before. I was holding back because I was thinking to myself, geez, as soon as I'm dead, they're going to put me in a refrigerator. So I went to my Lama and I asked him about it. He says, well, what do you think they do in Tibet? As soon as you die, man, it's already freezing there. So I said, oh, yeah. Yeah, I was attached to the body. I wanted the warmth.
What do they say, Lance? We're already a walking corpse.
We're walking
Why
corpse.
are you so attached to that corpse?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the things in Glimpse After Glimpse that Sogyal Rinpoche says very beautifully in one of his passages.
My granddaughter is from Nepal, and she was saying that there was a relative who was a lama in her family, and other lamas came to do prayers, and I'm assuming they were doing something similar to what we're doing here with the Bardo Todal. But they did put the body in a freezer, and she said the relative is still in there, and they kept the body in there because they felt that he wasn't quite ready yet, I guess ready to become a Buddha.
Wasn't right.
And they were continuing prayers. So that's all she knew. But I was interested to know how similar it was because Tibet and Nepal are right next to each other. So I'm sure customs are very similar. But here it is in today's lifetime, they're still doing this.
Yeah, I can't really comment on that. I'm sure that there's cultural things and differences between different, locations and the way they practice and so on. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so unless somebody else has something else, if you'll put up the Amitabha and the prayer to Sukhavati. So just to refresh everybody's memory real quick is we do this prayer to be reborn in the blissful pure land of Dewa-chen. Dewa-chen is the pure land of Buddha Amitabha. Amitabha is the wisdom of discriminating awareness. And so we are the most accessible of the meditation Buddhas. So the last line, Teata Pensadriwa Avabuddhanaya Soha, translated means this is it. The Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas are the 5 families and the 3 directions who have destroyed defilement lead to the equipoise of the mind. Who have destroyed defilement lead to equipoise of the mind. So we practice these meditation Buddhas because they are the teachers who lead us away from our confusions, from our defilements, from our kleshas. We wouldn't want to follow someone who hasn't done this. We want to go to the purest place that we can do this. So Debbie, would you lead us in this prayer, please?
Emaho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha of boundless light. On the right side is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful pure land of Dewa-chen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewa-chen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. By the power and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. Tayata Pensadriya Awa Bodhanaya Soha. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve all knowingness by defeating all enemies' confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of suffering. As Manjushri the warrior realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Om Ah Hum. Om Ah Hum. Om Ah Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Welcome.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll
Thank you,
continue
Matt.
next week.
Thank you all. Good night.